Hello everyone. Welcome to the Learner's Den. Today we will do chapter number 4, which is from the diary of Anne Frank. So the chapter is basically an extract from the diary which was written and maintained by Anne Frank. Starting with the setting of the story, this particular story is set in the year 1942 when Anne Frank was hiding with her family and four friends in Amsterdam during the German occupation of Netherlands during World War II. The diary was published later in 1945 after her death by her father, Otto Frank, who was the only one alive out of all the people living in the annex. Moving to the story begins by mentioning of the diary, that is when Anne Frank started writing the diary. She recalls saying that it is a very strange experience for someone like her because she had never written anything before, and also because she feels that no one will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. And it has proved to be absolutely incorrect because it still stands as one of the most important evidence of the Holocaust which happened during that time. And here she convinces herself that since she has a need to get all the things off her chest, she started writing the diary. She mentions also that paper has more patience than people. And she believes that since she is not planning to let anyone else read the diary that she has, unless she finds a real friend, which makes us question if she lacks a real friend, she feels it won't make much of a difference. And she also mentions how she is all alone and she does not have a friend. She also mentions that as a 13-year-old girl and being alone in the world is something quite unbelievable. And she does not want the audience to think as if she does not have a good family or she is not loved. She mentions that she has very loving parents. She has a 16-year-old sister and about 30 people that she can call friends. And she has a family, loving aunts, good home, and everything, but maybe she feels that it is somehow, since they do not confide in each other, that is the reason she does not feel that she is very close to anyone. So she feels that she is quite lonely, and that is the basic idea why she needs a diary. And she starts by calling her diary Kitty. And she starts the diary by giving a brief sketch of the things that she likes so far. First, she mentions about her family. Her father, according to her, is the most adorable father that she has ever seen, who married at the age of 36 when her mother was only 25. Her sister Margaret was born in Frankfurt in Germany 1926, and she was born on 12 June 1929. And they lived in Frankfurt until she was 4, and later her father emigrated to Holland in 1933. Then she started right away at the Montessori nursery school where she stayed there until she was 6, and she developed a very close relationship with her teacher, Mrs. Cupris. Later in the summer of 1941, her grandmother, who she was very close to, fell ill and had to have an operation. So she could not celebrate her birthday that year. The next year, her grandmother died in January 1942, and she feels that no one actually know how often she thinks of her and she still loves her, which gives us an idea how dearly she misses her grandmother and the kind of relationship that they share. After this, she mentions that now this brings us to the present day, which is 20th of June 1942, when she is making her first diary entry. And this is where the next part of our story talks about. So when she mentions in the diary, she starts by writing the date, the year, which is Saturday, 20th June 1942, and mentions the diary as Dearest Kitty, gives us a peek into her classroom, saying that her entire classroom was quaking in its boots, which means they were shaking with fear and they were all nervous. because the reason was because of the forthcoming meeting in which the teachers would decide who would move up to the next class and who would not. And she has friends whom she calls CN and Jack, who were betting on which children are going to go to the next class and which will not. And she also says that teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth because she believes that there's a good chance that whatever they are betting, whatever they feel might not actually happen. Then, however, she also feels that she is not very worried about her friends, except one subject that she is scared of is maths. And she gets pretty well with all the other teachers, which are nine of them, seven men and two women. But Mr. Keesing, who is an old fashioned person who teaches them maths, has been annoyed with her for ages because she talks so much. So, in order to punish her, he gives her an assignment to write as a punishment, the topic for which is chatterbox, trying to teach her a lesson through an essay. But instead of learning or being embarrassed about it, she decides to come up with convincing arguments to prove the necessity of talking. And she writes 3 pages of the essay, and once she was satisfied, she submits it to Mr. Keesing. In her essay, she mentions how talking is a student's trait, and that although she would do her best to keep it under control, but she might never be able to cure herself of this habit since it was her mother who talked as much as she did. And that is something that she has inherited from her mother, and it's so difficult to keep away the inherited traits. And Mr. Keesing, he had a good laugh about her arguments, and but still he was not satisfied since and kept talking in the class. So in the next class, he gave her another essay to write as an incorrigible chatterbox. Incorrigible is a very negative word which means about something which is a bad habit which cannot be stopped, cannot be corrected. And for this also, she writes another lesson. And he finally had enough. And as a punishment again for talking in the class, he asks her to write another essay entitled Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. But to this, Anne gets in touch with her friend Saint, who is good at poetry, and she offers her help to write the essay from beginning to end in the verse form. And with her help, she manages to write a beautiful essay about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings who were bitten to death by the father because they quacked too much. But luckily enough, it was Mr. Keesing who was able to take the joke in the right manner, and he read the poem to the class, adding his own comments, and to several other classes. He was rather impressed by the quality that she brought in her writing. And since then, he has allowed her to talk in the class, and he had not assigned her any extra homework. And nowadays, even Mr. Keesing has started making jokes and has accepted the students as they are. So the story ends in a very positive note where Anne is able to keep her point and Mr. Keesing is able to accept the way she is. Coming on to some important phrases, let's take a look. First important phrase is paper has more patience than people. It refers to the fact that the paper listens to you better than any human. It never judges you, interrupts you, comments on any actions that you do, and hence she feels writing a diary helps people release themselves and share their feelings without the fear of being exposed. Second, quacking in its boots. Quacking in its boots is referred to the classroom and classroom. It just means being very nervous and scared about the upcoming event. Let's take a look at the difficult words in this chapter. Musings mean thoughts, brooding meaning thinking seriously, plunk down meaning put down forcefully. Foggy is referred to Mr. Keesing, which means an old-fashioned person. Incorrigible means something which cannot be cured, something which cannot be corrected. Ingenuity means skill. Let's do an quick analysis of the story. If we take at the point of view, this is written as the first person narrative, And Anne writes the story herself, hence she uses the pronouns I/me as she is writing in her diary, explaining the events that occurred in the school. The theme is the inner conflicts or the secrets, though it is not mentioned entirely in this particular chapter, but it is about the inner conflict as Anne was constantly at odds with herself and she felt a lack of a true friend in her life. Apart from that, the idea of secrets and hiding away, which is both literally and figuratively central to this particular chapter and to the book from where this extract have been taken, that is the diary of a young girl. Title justification, obviously, it is very apt as the chapter is an expert from Anne's actual diary, which is titled The Diary of a Young Girl. So, this is the most appropriate title to the story. Coming to the important dates, because this is one chapter in your book which has a lot of dates which are important. First is Anne Frank. Her birthday is on 12th June 1929 and she lived till 1945. Next, the family went into hiding in the year 1942. That is also the time when she started writing the diary. The final entry in her diary was made on August 1st, 1944. After that, she was not able to make any further entries in her diary. Birth of Sister Margot was in 1926. Her father emigrated to Holland in 1933. Grandma fell ill in the summer of 1941, which required an operation, and finally she passes away in January 1942. Moving on, if we look at the character sketch of Anne Frank, we learn that she's a very intelligent and perspective little girl because she's able to justify her talking to Mr. Keesing. She has a very creative mind. She comes up with long essays and even with a beautiful story, all written in verse, to put forth her thoughts. She is innocent and emotional because she feels that she is very lonely and she also misses her grandmother very much, which shows her emotional side. She is witty and humorous because the way she takes the punishment and reverses it in a way to actually teach Mr. Keesing something about herself. She has very mature thoughts. This can be derived from the fact that she feels that there is a good way of expressing herself through writing in the diary, and she justifies how it is the best way. She seeks love and attention either from her family, from her grandmother, from her teachers, and that is, I think, the only thing that she is looking for in her life. If we talk about the character sketch of Mr. Keesing, then he comes up as an old-fashioned traditional approach towards teaching. He is strict while with the class, and he does not tolerate any kind of disturbance. And he's also creative, we can say, because he finds new ways to punish a child instead of beating up or scolding. He gives punishment in a new way. He can take a joke instead of being angry at Anne for writing that verse poem. He was actually impressed by her skills and he understood what she needed and he thought he could help. And he was also, at the end of the story, we see that he was willing to change with the time and he makes conscious efforts to understand his students. So at the end, he comes up as a very nice teacher. I think that's all about the content. I hope you like it. If you do, please like, share, and subscribe. And happy learning. Bye bye.